Hello, I am Amy Cha from Samsung SDS Logistics Market Intelligence Group. It's good to see you again. This is today's agenda. I am going to talk about indicators of air demand, supply and freight rates, and the merger of Korean Air and Asiana Airlines, which have recently become the hottest topics in the air market. Then Sylvester will explain the trends in the maritime market, including demand, supply, freight rate, and decreased productivity in container equipment operation and increased cost. Also, there will be a time to talk about the special report published last February under the topic, the U.S. inventory cycle, and the implication to container trade. The report was about the analysis of the U.S. inventory cycle and the impact of container traffic. Please look forward to Sylvester's explanation of what insights we can receive in logistics through the U.S. inventory cycle. In today's webinar, we have a guest for the first time. The first guest to be honored is Sung-Chul Hong from the Logistics Data Innovation Group, and he is in charge of the Samsung SDS Outlook Index. We will have a chance to ask him questions that everyone has been wondering about. I'm Amy Cha from the Logistics Market Intelligence Group, presenting on air market trends. By now, you should be familiar with the TAC index, one of the best indicators of air market trends. A rate metric that shows the all-in cost between airports divided by the actual weight on a weekly basis. You can check last week's air freight rate by selecting the trade lane. In other words, it is a graph that shows the unit price of air freight. The TAC index can be used for forecasting changes in volume and freight rates because fluctuations in freight rates are the result of natural supply and demand. Let's take a look at the fluctuations for Hong Kong, China, Vietnam, and India. In February, the Lunar New Year holiday had a significant impact on rates. The impact is most evident in Hong Kong and Shanghai, which celebrated the Lunar New Year holiday. The average rates for March are all down month on month. Hong Kong to Europe recorded $3.83, Hong Kong to North America $4.27, Shanghai to Europe $3.47. Shanghai to North America $4.11, reduced by 10%. If you look at the bar graph below, it peaked in week 7 before the holiday, then the rates plunged in week 8, and it is slowly recovering, but it has not yet reached pre-Lunar New Year levels. On the other hand, rate trends in India are quite different. Shall we check by moving on to the next slide? Delhi Airport has literally become a hot place. This is because Southeast Asian clothing exporters are switching from Delhi to air transportation to avoid a ship attack in the Red Sea that has halted container shipments and caused a departure delay of about 2 weeks. Inditex, which operates the Zara, Massimo Dutti, and Oysho brands that you know well, produces 6.4% of its total production in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Inditex is trucking inland from Dhaka to India and then flying from India to Europe to meet the delivery date for fast-spending fashion products. Let's check the bar graph below to see how much the rates have risen. India to Europe route has been increased by 92% compared to January 15th. The rate, which was a low of $1.34 in January, hit $2.58 in early March. It is said that there are many difficulties in securing space on site, and the rate is expected to increase even more. India to North America also rose about 35%, with rates at a low of $2.73 in January to $3.69 in March. This is Samsung SDS TAC Outlook. There are some changes in the forecasted Hong Kong-US rates for March. Rates have changed from a forecast of $5.20 in February to a forecast of $3.90 in March, and lane to Europe has not changed much from its previous forecast. The rates from Hong Kong to North America will rise to $5 in April, are expected to be lowered smoothly by November, and are expected to rebound at the end of the year. On the other hand, Hong Kong to Europe shows a flat graph, but rates are expected to fall down slowly. This is the World ACD trend. World ACD is a data publishing company based in Amsterdam. Based on more than 350,000 files of origin and destination transactions per week, World ACD releases air logistics market reports. The chart you're looking at is different from the monthly report. The monthly report and the webinar have a 1-week period, so the webinar will announce the 9th week of data to give you the latest information. February 2024 didn't go by the old pattern. The Lunar New New Year Day, a long holiday in Asia, was also 3 weeks later than usual, and February this year was the first leap month in 4 years. In addition, it was a rather complicated month in terms of statistics, as the aftermath of the Red Sea crisis still remains. Overall air cargo demand for February showed signs of recovery after the Lunar New Year holiday. A surge in demand from the Middle East and Asia to Europe drove a 13% increase in overall air demand, an impressive 22% increase over the same period last year. With this momentum, supply is also on the rise. Supply has been slowly picking up since the Chinese New Year holiday, and compared to last year, supply is up 9%. Only the Middle East and South Asia region is showing strong growth in rates. In particular, Dubai-Europe air freight is up 154% in volume and 13% in freight rates compared to the same period last year. However, week 9 volumes were 23% lower than last week's volumes, suggesting that demand may slow going forward. Let's look at air market trends and short-term outlook. March marks the beginning of the off-season, when there is no seasonal demand to drive rates in the marketplace. The Red Sea event has diverted some air shipments, but only to a few locations, such as Delhi and Dubai. Overall, it is stable, but it is necessary to pay attention to the movement of cross-border e-commerce from China. Have you heard of the app Temu lately? I'm not much of an internet shopper, but I often see ads about Temu. Temu is a Chinese cross-border e-commerce platform. You may be familiar with e-commerce, but you may not be familiar with cross-border e-commerce. E-commerce, where you can buy things from Coupang or Market Kurly without going to the supermarket in your country. Cross-border means across borders, so it refers to a business that sells products or services to customers around the world through an online e-commerce store or platform. To put it simply, it's an overseas direct purchase. Temu is a new platform in China, and its growth has been phenomenal. Within 6 months of launching in the US, it became the #1 downloaded app on Google Play and the App Store and has remained there ever since. Behind Temu is its parent company, Pinduoduo, which has strong backing and has run aggressive ad campaigns across major platforms, including the Super Bowl, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. In particular, Temu offers free delivery for all orders and is competitive in fast delivery, which provides credits as compensation if delivery is delayed. It provides free international shipping for a minimum order of about $13. Shein, the Chinese version of Uniqlo, is also on the rise. With a production turnaround of less than 3 days, 4,000 new women's apparel products every day, 24-hour shipping, and free international shipping, they are leading the way in the real-time retail era. With this aggressive marketing, Temu and Shein's user base and volume are growing rapidly. As of December 2023, on an average day, Shein ships about 5,000 tons and Temu about 4,000 tons, which is the equivalent of 95 freighters. These large-scale shipments have a huge impact on the air freight market. Let's check the graph at the bottom left to see how it affects the market. A pink solid line refers to spot rates that represent one-time rates, and a pink dotted line refers to contract rates that mean fixed rates for more than a month. And the gray solid line is the share of the spot rates. If it's less than 50%, it means that the shippers choose the contract rates over the spot rates. Currently, the share of spot rates from Northeast Asia to the Americas is 43%, and shippers are using more expensive contract rates than spot rates. Why is that? It's because of the fast delivery competitiveness mentioned earlier. Temu is competitive in fast delivery times, where products arrive within 9 days with a 61% probability anywhere in the world and arrive within 12 days with a 91% probability. An important factor in enabling such fast delivery is the mass use of air cargo. To keep up with the shipping schedule, Temu and Shein began to occupy space from Asia with higher contract rates than spot prices. Air rates from Asia are expected to rise in the future, as the delivery competitiveness of the two companies could put pressure on other shippers using air to secure space. Next, we will find out about the cargo supply provided by Servie. This Servie report can check the supply by continent and type in 2019. On January 24th, global cargo supply increased by 10.3% compared to January 19th. Asia to Europe is down 13%. Intra-Asia is up 4%. The supply from South America to North America has increased by 30%, but there is another continent with more supply. It showed the highest rate of supply growth in Asia to the Middle East, increasing 38%. The increase in supply means that the demand has increased that much, right? Next, let's look at the growth rate of supply by type. The supply of passenger planes has decreased by 9% compared to 2019. However, the supply of freighters increased by 26% compared to 2019, and the total supply recovered to the level of passenger planes. Passenger supply is similar to last month's forecast. International passenger demand in 2024 continues to rise as it recovers close to the level of 2019. In particular, it is expected to exceed the 2019 year level from the 12th week. Visa waiver policies and increased international passenger demand contribute to expanded supply, a recovery in global tourism, and local economic expansion. Since China's reopening on January 23rd, Japan has been the #1 country to travel to China, with passenger demand rising 895% compared to last year. The second place was Korea, where demand increased by 649%. It can be seen that the demand for passengers heading to China has exploded in the order I mentioned, with Thailand being the third and Hong Kong being the fourth. Next, let's look at the current status of jet fuel and fuel surcharges. Fortunately, the fuel surcharge, which will take effect on March 15th, was frozen at 710 Korean won last month on a long-distance basis. However, jet fuel increased by about 4.8%. Next month, there may be a change in fuel surcharges due to this effect. The following is an analysis of the supply dominance of a mega carrier. Today's issue briefing session will be held with Sylvester. Hi Sylvester, have you heard about the acquisition of Air-Asiana by Korean Air through the news?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that process because of the mileage.
I hope it goes all well. Now, as we await the outcome of the U.S. merger review, let's summarize the nearly 4-year journey. In 2020, Korean Air, Korea's largest airline, jumped into the race to acquire Air-Asiana Airlines, the second largest airline with financial difficulties. If successful, the deal would end 32 years of competition between the two major full-service carriers in the domestic airline industry and create a dominant monopoly. If Korean Air and Air-Asiana Airlines merge, the combined market share of the two companies' international passenger routes and major cargo routes will exceed 70%, which is more than the 50% mark. The figure considered market dominant by the Fair Trade Commission. For this reason, the Fair Trade Commission and each country's antitrust authorities' approval of the business combination became a key issue. In November 2020, the government decided to merge the two companies at a meeting of ministers on strengthening industrial competitiveness presided over by the Minister of Strategy and Finance. On the same day, the board of directors of Korean Air also decided to acquire Air-Asiana Airlines. In January of the following year, Korean Air reported business combinations to 14 countries. And a year later, the Korea Fair Trade Commission conditionally approved the business combination of Korean Air and Air-Asiana Airlines.
What are the conditions?
Before we figure out what the conditions are, do you know the words slot and traffic rights?
I know the traffic right, but I can't figure out what slot is. What is it?
Slot means the time allotted for the aircraft to take off and land or move from the airport. The right of an aircraft to use the airport at a certain time is a slot. For example, Korean Air has 10 slots per week on the Incheon-London route. This means that 10 planes, including passenger flights and freighters, take off and land in Incheon-London a week. In addition, for airlines, a flight schedule is one of the competitive components to be chosen by customers. And about traffic rights. It refers to the right to carry passengers and cargo by aircraft. Usually, airlines can operate freely without limiting the number of flights or seats between countries with the Open Sky Agreement. In order to operate between countries that are not under the Open Sky Agreement, traffic rights are determined by countries. Let's go back and see what conditions the Fair Trade Commission gave Korean Air to approve the merger. The KFTC approved the merger, but imposed the following conditions on 26 international routes and 8 domestic routes, where rates are expected to increase in the creation of mecha carrier. The first condition is that Korean Air must return domestic airport slots to new airlines entering the market or expanding existing airlines. The second condition is that Korean Air must return the traffic right for a total of 11 routes out of 26 international routes, new airlines entering the market or expanding existing airlines. Accordingly, Korean Air is required to implement the structural measures for 10 years from the date of the business combination, the date of completion of the acquisition of Air-Asiana's shares.
So if a new airline comes along or an existing airline requests an increase on the Gimpo-Jeju route, Korean Air has to give up its slots?
Yes, you are right. China's competition authority also granted conditional approval, subject to the return of slots on 9 routes, including Beijing, Xi'an, Shenzhen. British competition authorities' conditions are not only the return of slots at London's Heathrow Airport, but also the code-share conditions for Korean Air and Virgin Atlantic.
What is code share?
A code share is when two companies sell a single airplane together. For example, when Korean Air flies from Incheon Airport to London Heathrow Airport, they have 368 seats to sell. They give Virgin Atlantic the right to sell some of those seats. They can share not only seats but also check-in counter and lounges. That is because Virgin Atlantic and Korean Air are part of the same airline alliance, SkyTeam.
Oh, code sharing is only possible when you're in the same alliance.
Yes, of course.
I see.
The Japanese competition authority's condition is some slots on a total of 7 routes from Seoul and Busan being transferred when new airlines request them to operate. And let's look at the conditional approval of the European Competition Authority, which will make the most recent and biggest change. The European Competition Authority has approved conditionally. Condition number 1, Korean Air will divest Air-Asiana's global cargo freighter business. The divestment includes freighter aircraft, slots, traffic rights, flight crew, and other employees, as well as customer cargo contracts, among others. Condition number 2, passenger air transport services on routes between Seoul and certain European destinations, specifically Barcelona, Paris, Frankfurt, and Rome.
The golden route goes to Tway Airlines?
Yes, that's right. It's not just a simple return of slots, but Korean Air has to lend 5 airplanes, transfer crews, and even mechanics until Tway can operate normally.
Why would they go to such lengths, Amy?
Because there is a condition that the merger will not be completed until Tway is operational on 4 European routes. With only one last U.S. approval left, Korean Air is determined to get it, and will stop at nothing to get it. This slide shows how Korean Air and Air-Asiana's international standing would change if they became one family. This is IATA statistics for 2020. The pie graph shows the top 30 full-service carriers by revenue and cargo volume, including Express. After the merger, Korean Air is 7th globally in revenue.
Amy, who is the number 1 airline?
Delta at number 1, American Airlines at number 2, United at number 3, All American Airlines, and then Lufthansa from Germany at number 4, Emirates from the United Arab Emirates at number 5, KLM, the national carrier of the Netherlands, at number 6, which is a subsidiary of Air France, and then Korean Air at number 7 after the merger. The following is by volume. We expect it to be ranked number 3 in the world as a full-service carrier, excluding Express. Qatar Airways in first place, Emirates in second, and Cathay Pacific in third. But after the merger, Korean Air will take the 3rd place. However, when you factor in the divestiture of Air-Asiana's cargo division and the return of slots that directly impact revenue, the ranking may change. What is clear is that Korean Air's position in the rankings is the result of a merger that has created a mega carrier.
So as soon as the U.S. competition authorities approve and Tway starts flying to Europe, Korean Air will just buy Air-Asiana?
Even after approval from U.S. competition authorities, the actual integration of Korean Air and Air-Asiana Airlines is expected to take another 2 years. Until then, Korean Air and Air-Asiana will operate independently, and a unified Korean Air is expected to be launched. It is also expected that the Air-Asiana-affiliated LCC's Air Busan and Air Seoul will be included in the merger. However, it's more complicated whether Air Busan and Air Seoul will be part of the combined LCC, which we'll talk more about in the next slide. And there will be changes in alliance affiliation. Sylvester, how is the Alliance Gemini going on?
Yeah, it seems to be moving along nicely. with progress being reported in the news every once in a while.
Alliances are strategic partnerships between airlines, and there are some large alliances in the airline industry. In order of size, they are first Star Alliance, second SkyTeam, and third Oneworld. Air-Asiana used to be part of Star Alliance, but after the merger, it will be part of SkyTeam, where Korean Air is. This is one of the issues in the U.S. merger review process. There is strong opposition from United Airlines, which shares code share, miles, lounges, and check-in counters on U.S. routes with Air-Asiana. If Air-Asiana were to move to SkyTeam, Star Alliance would lose a key ally on the U.S.-Korea route, as SkyTeam would take over 80% of the route.
Oh, they are not just losing a friend but also losing revenue through code shares.
Got it. This slide shows the impact on the logistics market. The integration of operations, facility operations, and maintenance, which were separated, will reduce costs and ultimately reduce logistics costs for exporters. It is also expected that the competitiveness of the Korean aviation industry will enhance due to the streamlining of redundant routes and diversification of slots. As a condition of the merger, Korean Air must transfer 50 years of airline operations and maintenance know-how to TWA and Air-Asiana's cargo buyer. The transfer of golden routes, which are directly related to revenue, to domestic LCCs will also provide new competitiveness to low-cost carriers, which are always facing management and funding difficulties. A series of mergers and acquisitions could be the basis for creating a healthy industry ecosystem for the Korean airline industry. However, some negative impacts are also expected. With less competition from the big airlines, we expect other price increases and a decline in service quality. There is also a concern that some routes and transfers to foreign airlines will reduce the competitiveness of the domestic airline industry. In particular, the transfer of slots and concessions on major European routes to LCCs are expected to increase fares due to the reduction of routes in those sectors.
Are the slots and traffic right to LCCs for passenger flights?
Yes, that's correct. The European competition authorities gave conditional approval for both passenger and cargo. The condition for the cargo part was divestiture. 4 companies, Jeju Air, Air Premia, E-Star Airlines, and Air-Asiana, have submitted LOI in the preliminary bidding for Air-Asiana Cargo. Air-Asiana Cargo currently operates a fleet of 8 freighters, 3 leased with revenue of 1.067 trillion won last year. During the COVID-19 period, the freight division was the driving force that kept Air-Asiana going with huge sales, but eventually became the target of the sale, causing job insecurity among Air-Asiana employees. Next, let's talk about the LCC reorganization in full swing.
I know this. Let me list it. There are a total of 9 LCCs in Korea: Jeju Air, Jin Air, Air Busan, E-Star, T-Way, Air Seoul, Air OK, Fly Gangwon, and Air Premia.
Good job. It's been said that the biggest beneficiary of this merger is T-Way. Without the merger, we would have had to wait 50 years to get the Paris and Rome transportation rights. CEO Jung Hong-jun of T-Way also said about the redistribution of the traffic right and slots. T-Way will take over passenger slots on 4 European routes abandoned by Korean Air: Paris, Rome, Barcelona, and Frankfurt. In addition, Korean Air will provide 5 long-haul aircraft and operational staff to ensure a smooth transition. Until the merger is completed, it is highly likely that Korean Air will transfer its transportation rights first because it cannot touch the transportation rights of Air-Asiana Airlines. However, it remains to be seen whether T-Way can handle this golden route with no alternative aircraft available for flight defects or delays. Do you know the family tree of the LCCs?
Jin Air is affiliated with the Korean airline. Air Busan and Air Seoul are affiliated with Air-Asiana Air. Are they also included in the merger?
If Korean Air and Air-Asiana become one integrated carrier, the question is whether Jin Air, Air Busan, and Air Seoul will also become one integrated mega LCC. First, we need to understand how LCCs came to be. The low-cost carrier has been around since the 1990s, mainly focusing on short-haul flights to places like the United States and Europe where land transportation is inconvenient due to large land masses. The United States has a very developed domestic airline scene due to its large land mass. There are 9 low-cost carriers in the U.S. that offer cheap flights compared to full-service carriers like Delta, American, and United.
Oh my God, even the United States, which is 98 times the size of Korea, has 9 LCCs.
LCC's main routes are Gimpo to Jeju, Japan, and Southeast Asia. With 9 LCCs overlapping operations for limited demand and passenger demand bottoming out after the pandemic, most LCCs are seeing annual operating losses. Therefore, there is a secret hope that a new LCC will emerge that can reduce the number of LCCs, avoid overcompetition, and challenge Jeju Air's overwhelming size. But you can't just blindly consolidate 3 LCCs.
Why is it so hard? Seems like it's a nice chance to sort out the overuse of LCC permits.
The reason for this is their regional base airports and interests. Jin Air has Incheon and Gimpo as its base airports. Air Seoul has Incheon as its base airport. And finally, where is the base airport of Air Busan?
It is Gimhae Airport in Busan.
Yes, the base airport will fulfill both international and domestic demand. For example, Air Seoul's international routes all depart from Incheon Airport. Jin Air's international flights depart from Gimpo Airport or both Incheon and Gimpo airports. Similarly, Air Busan's international flights only depart from Gimhae Airport. If 3 LCCs consolidate as one mega LCC and make Incheon its base airport, the city of Busan, which is Air Busan's base airport, and where Gimhae Airport is located, will advocate the separation of Air Busan, fearing huge losses to its local economy. This is also because Busan is in desperate need of an airline based in Busan for the successful operation of Gaedokdo New Airport, which is scheduled to open in 2029. How do you see the changes that will come with the merger of Korean Air and Air-Asiana? It will certainly not be a smooth process, but I hope that it will create a healthy industry ecosystem for airline industry in Korea, as Chairman Cho Won-tae of Korean Air said. This concludes our airline presentation.
Hello, I'm Sylvester Lim, and I'm in charge of Ocean at Logistics MI Group, and I'd like to start my presentation on the ocean sector following air. First, let's look at the forecast of freight rates and SCFI for 24 predicted by Samsung SDS Logistics Data Innovation Group. Today, I'd like to remind you that as a special guest, you will be able to hear more detailed information from the person in charge of the Logistics Data Innovation Group who provided this forecast data. The average composite index for February 24 was 2,165, up 35 points from the previous month, but it can be seen as a result of the February GRI, general rate increase on North American routes. We expect the freight rate level to stabilize gradually from mid-February, when the effect of the Lunar New Year holiday is resolved, and the SCFI composite index is expected to decline in the second quarter, remaining between 1,519 and 1,715. Looking at the freight rate outlook by route in detail, USEC, which was at $5,608 per FEU in the SCFI released on March 8, will average $5,548 in March. USWC, which was at $4,039, will average $4,012 in March, and to North Europe, which was at $2,134 per TEU, to $1,621 per TEU, it was expected that all routes would fall further than the recently announced levels. Now take a look at the market outlook from global shipping research organizations, including Drewry. In its February report, Drewry predicts that freight rates will continue to remain higher than usual for the foreseeable future, although there will be some gradual decline due to the recent Red Sea crisis. In particular, the reason why freight rates on the Asia-North America route have remained high compared to other routes after the spike in freight rates is due to the solid demand growth in the North American market since the second half of last year and the efforts of carriers to control the supply of vessels, including active blank sailings. In the case of blank sailings, it was revealed that a total of 70 blank sailings were conducted on North American routes in February, which was the Chinese New Year, while only 20 blank sailings were conducted on North Europe routes, and the number of blank sailings will be significantly reduced to only 12 on North America routes in March. If the fleet is operated according to the pro forma schedules without blank sailings, the supply will inevitably increase again, which will put downward pressure on freight rates. In a February report, Clarkson stated that the diversion of the Red Sea area has partially offset the oversupply of ships, but also presented the expected growth rate of container supply in 2024 at 8.5%, up 0.5% p from last month's 8%, predicting that shipping conditions will become even more challenging. French shipping company CMA-CGM was optimistic that the increase in cargo volume would continue in the first half of 2024, especially due to increased demand such as inventory replenishment in North America. It was predicted that there would be great uncertainty in the second half of the year, including a slowdown in the global economy. On this page, you'll find the global container fleet update from Clarksons. Notably, as mentioned on the previous page, Clarksons presented the year-on-year growth rates for container ship supply in 2024 and 2025 at 8.5% and 5.1% respectively, which is 0.5% p higher than last month's forecast. I attribute the higher net growth in supply to a downward revision in the forecast for scrapping in 2024, which is expected to be around 120,000 TEUs, from 450,000 TEUs to 330,000 TEUs. Presumably, the increase in the operational fleet in response to the current Red Sea situation may have resulted in scrapping plans being cancelled or postponed. As you can see in the blue text, Clarksons' 24 supply growth forecast has been gradually increasing from the 5.8% level in April of last year. This time, we will look at demand, that is, the increase or decrease in container traffic volume. This graph also contains forecasts for increases and decreases in supply and demand from Clarksons, a shipping research institute. The forecast for the supply growth rate in 2024 and 2025 have been raised by 0.5% p each, but there is no change in the growth rate of demand, that is, container traffic volume. It appears that the extent of the supply-demand imbalance will inevitably widen. Now let's take a look at the SCFI Composite Index released every week by the Shanghai Shipping Exchange. Due to the increase in freight rates on North America routes in early February and the volume rush before the Lunar New Year holiday, the average SCFI Composite Index in February recorded 2,165 points, up 1.6% from the previous month. However, after the Lunar New Year holiday in February, due to weak volume from China, the end of blank sailing, and competition among shipping companies to secure bookings, the composite index on a weekly basis began with 2,166 points announced on February 9th and dropped to 2,166 points on March 8th. In particular, regarding North America routes, which led the rise in freight rates, according to data released by the U.S. Department of Commerce in mid-February. U.S. retail sales in January fell by 8% compared to the previous month. It can be seen that the speed of recovery in maritime transportation demand in North America is slowing after the Lunar New Year holiday. Reflecting this, the freight rate to North America was $5,608 per FEU as of March 8th, down 12.5%. from the February average of $6,410. For reference, freight rates for North Europe routes announced on the same day show an even greater decline, dropping 18.7% to $2,134, compared to the February average of $2,626. This time, we look at the fleet capacity trends of the top 10 global container shipping companies. As expected, MSC, the undisputed number one shipping company, maintained its market share of 19.7%, the same as last month, with a total fleet of 5.67 million TEU. What is worth noting is that according to Alphaliner Weekly published after the time of writing this data, Hapag-Lloyd's fleet reached 2,520,000 TEU as of February 21st, exceeding 2 million TEU for the first time. Looking at the history of this shipping company, it grew to 980,000 TEU through the merger of CSAV, a Chilean shipping company, in January 2015, and 1.53 million TEU 2 years later through the merger of UASC in the Middle East, and achieved 2 million TEU in less than 7 years. However, the order book is currently at 12% of the fleet, which is low compared to other major shipping companies. And it is also unusual that Maersk, which will become a Gemini cooperation partner from February next year, has an order book of only 10.4%. This is a comparison graph of the weekly vessel capacity deployed on the east-west route by alliances provided by Alphaliner, a French shipping research agency. If you look at the capacity deployed on the Asia-North America route on the left, you can see that the total number of ships in February was about 540,000 TEU, a 2% increase from the previous month. In the case of the number of ships deployed on the Asia-Europe route on the right, all alliances appear to have increased both year-on-year and month-on-month. This is due to the deployment of additional ships for detours due to the Red Sea incidents. In addition, the proportion of others that do not belong to any alliance on the Asia-Europe route increased by about 52% compared to the previous year. This reflects the smaller shipping lines providing services to and from Russia following the Russia-Ukraine war, as well as the riskier carriers serving the Red Sea region. The global schedule reliability indicator for major routes, provided by Danish shipping research firm Sea Intelligence, is based on arrival within plus or minus 1 business day of the scheduled arrival date. The average on-time performance of container carriers, surveyed across 34 routes worldwide, was 51.6% in January 2024, down 5.2% from 56.8% in the previous month, the second consecutive month of decline, reflecting the supply chain disruptions caused by the Red Sea disaster. The schedule reliability of container ships has typically been in the 70 to 80% range, dropping to 30% during the COVID-19 pandemic, recovering to 60 to 70% during the pandemic, and then falling back to the 50% range as the Red Sea crisis unfolded. Let's take a look at the global average number of days of delay and the schedule reliability of each shipping company for the month of January. Currently, there is a global average delay of 6.01 days in the number of sailing days because of the Cape of Good Hope detour in Africa caused by the Red Sea incident, and it can be seen that none of the top 13 shipping companies have improved schedule reliability compared to the previous month. The shipping company with the modest decline compared to the previous month was Wanhai, minus 0.9%, and conversely, the shipping company with the most severe decline was, surprisingly, Maersk, with a decline of minus 13.2%. Again, this time compared to the same period last year, only 7 out of 13 shipping companies improved their schedule reliabilities, and among them, Wanhai was the only one that showed a double-digit improvement. Attention is being paid to how long it will take to recover the 70 to 80% schedule reliability level of previous years, and whether Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd's Gemini will be able to deliver over 90% schedule reliability through the hub-and-spoke strategy they are proclaiming. Next, we will look at the supply status of container equipment by major production bases in Asia. This table is being updated through Samsung SDS network of major shipping companies and forwarders in China and the East and Southwest Asia regions. First of all, it was found that equipment supply at major shipping ports in China was limited only to the Chinese shipping company COSCO. In the case of Southeast Asia, it was found that the supply of equipment from Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam was generally limited. This was due to an increase in the number of containers bypassing the Cape of Good Hope in Africa on European routes, making it difficult to provide container equipment or delaying pickup due to delays in arrival schedules for ships returning to Asian ports. Fortunately, we have recently heard that the situation is easing somewhat after the Chinese New Year holiday in February. Let's take a look at the waiting status of container ships at major North American ports. There are 6 graphs. The 3 above show the number of ships waiting at each major port until February, and the 3 below show the number of waiting days at each major port. First, if you look at the ports of New York and New Jersey, which are major ports on the east coast of North America, the drought situation in the Panama Canal, the gateway to the east coast of North America, has recently improved slightly. So the number of ships calling after passing through these ports is gradually increasing, but port congestion does not occur. On the west coast of North America, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach have remained stable at around 26 vessels waiting at the outer port and 3.7 waiting days. despite the arrival of ships that sailed prior to the Chinese New Year holiday and an increase in volumes that are using inland transportation to reach the east coast of North America. A breakdown of container throughput by global ports. This is called throughput, which is the sum of imports, exports, and transshipment throughput at a port. The table on the left, which shows the year-on-year growth in throughput, shows that most ports experienced a modest increase in January throughput compared to the previous year. In particular, the ports of LA and LB on the west coast of North America saw a spike of more than 15% year-over-year. This can be analyzed as a result of the base effect of sluggish volumes due to the previous year's dockworker strike and increased demand, while the ports of New York and Savannah, which are located on the east coast of North America, saw a year-on-year increase of less than 5%, which can be attributed to the impact of sluggish volumes due to the Panama Canal congestion. Here are some of the top maritime news stories from the month of February. The first is related to the Panama Canal, the gateway to the east coast of North America. In an interview in mid-February, an official from the Panama Canal Authority, or ACP as it is called in English, rather than PCA, said that they do not expect any changes to the current policy of restricting ship traffic until April. The restrictive policy here refers to the original plan to allow only 20 vessels to pass through the canal per day from mid-January, but the situation in the canal has improved somewhat, and 24 vessels per day are currently passing through the canal. The ACP added that the prolonged Red Sea situation has led to a growing demand from many vessels to transit the Panama Canal, but this is not possible unless water levels return to normal levels, and the ACP will assess water levels after the end of the dry season in April to make a decision. Next is related to the Ocean Alliance, one of the maritime alliances. 4 shipping companies, France's CMA-CGM, China's COSCO, Taiwan's Evergreen, and Hong Kong's OOCL, met in Shanghai on February 27 to sign an MOU extending their Ocean Alliance cooperation until 2032, instead of the original 2027 expiration date. The alliance, which was formed in 2017, was originally intended to be a 5-year collaboration with an option for a 5-year renewal. The agreement is rumored to be a response to Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd's Gemini cooperation, which launches next February, and was also aimed at consolidating the alliance and preventing any defections. This is expected to deepen the woes of the alliance, which is facing the impending departure of its largest member Hapag-Lloyd, and has been considering regrouping with Ocean Alliance members to become more competitive. Moreover, with the recent news of the signing of a vessel sharing agreement, VSA Vessel Sharing Agreement, between MSC and the Israeli shipping company Zim, it can be seen that the scope of movement has become narrower. Here, VSA or Vessel Sharing Agreement means a contract between shipping companies to share ships only on specific routes. This is different from Alliance, which deploys ships and shares ships according to the same conditions agreed upon on all routes through the conclusion of one contract. It will be interesting to see what the response will be in the short time before the Gemini cooperation launches next February. The last article is again about the Panama Canal. In early February, the U.S. National Weather Service predicted that there was an 80% chance that El Niño would end between April and June of this year. El Niño refers to a phenomenon in which the seawater in the eastern Pacific Ocean, including the Pacific coast of South America, becomes warmer. When it occurs, the Panama Canal area suffers from a severe drought. We expect that when El Niño ends and the climate transitions to La Niña, the current Panama Canal congestion situation may be resolved, as it will bring above-average rainfall to the canal. The Panama Canal Authority said that it will maintain the current policy of 24 ships per day until the end of the dry season in April, and expressed hope that if the rainy season arrives in May, it will be possible to return to the usual level of 36 ships per day. I think it is time for all of us to come together with one mind and one intention to hold a ritual for rain. Now it is time to analyze major issues in the maritime market. This month, we have come to discuss the topic decreased productivity and increased costs of container equipment operation. As you know, The supply chain disruption in the Panama Canal and Suez Canal has seriously increased transit time, causing many problems as well as punctuality. According to Drewry, the number of transportation days required from Singapore or Malaysia, the last shipping port on the Asia-Europe route, to the first port of call, such as Rotterdam in Northern Europe, has increased since the end of 2023, reaching 32.4 days in early 2024, exceeding 30 days. Longer voyage days or periods are causing challenges for Asian export destinations, such as more days waiting for shipment, resulting in damaged equipment due to sea breezes or collisions, and canceled bookings or delayed pickups due to a lack of available empty containers. This problem worsened mainly at ports in China and Southeast Asia during the volume rush period before the Chinese Lunar New Year holiday. Although it is understood to be gradually improving after the Lunar New Year holiday, it is still not completely resolved. Another problem that arises from this equipment shortage is the increased cost of procuring containers. When there is a shortage of equipment, shipping companies purchase containers or shippers lease container equipment from specialized companies. The prices of both methods are said to have skyrocketed since January of this year. For example, in China's Shekou region, especially ahead of the Lunar New Year, container purchase prices are said to have skyrocketed by about 43% compared to a month ago. Equipment leasing, especially on a one-way move basis from China to Europe or North America, has also seen the cost of leasing jump to $550 in January, nearly 4 times the $130 cost of forwarding, for example, from Shanghai to Le Havre, France, a typical route. This is a staggering increase in cost, which ultimately translates into higher costs for shippers, both directly in the case of leasing and indirectly in the case of the purchase by the shipping company. Next, this is a summary of the contents of the February special report, which Logistics MI Group ambitiously prepared and distributed for the first time on February 29th. The first topic selected is the U.S. inventory cycle and the implication to container trade. The U.S. inventory cycle consists of 4 stages. Like the economic cycle: recovery, expansion, recession, and contraction. First, there is a recovery phase, reactive destocking, in which sales increase and inventory decreases, and an expansion phase, active stocking, in which both sales and inventory increase, and a recession phase, reactive stocking, in which sales decrease and inventory increases. Finally, a contraction phase, active destocking, in which both sales and inventory decrease. Recently, U.S. sales have started to increase again, suggesting that we may have entered a period of reactive destocking, the recovery phase. Next, let's take a look at U.S. import volumes, or container volumes, and what's influencing that. First is the sales growth rate. Of course, sales trends can be said to be a leading indicator of inventory, and there is a strong correlation between the sales growth rate and the growth rate of container volume imported into the United States. If you look at the graph below, you can see them moving together very clearly. Next, let's look at inventory growth. Typically, inventory growth follows the growth of U.S. import volume. In the below graph, you can see that the growth of import volume tends to move in much larger swings before inventory growth in blue moves up and down. From this, we can infer that inventory growth is a good proxy for import volume growth. Next, let's look at the inventory status in the U.S. wholesale market. First of all, inventory in the U.S. market is largely divided into 3 sectors: retail, wholesale, and manufacturing. Among these, the wholesale sector compiles and discloses the inventory growth rate for each item as follows. The table shows the inventory growth rate by wholesale item in November 2023 compared to the same period of the previous year. You can see that the inventory of farm product raw materials, apparel, piece goods and notions, paper and paper products, and furniture and home furnishings is at the lowest level. If sales are recovering like they are these days, the stock of these items will run out quickly. Continuing from the previous page, let's look at the relationship between the growth rate of wholesale sales and the growth rate of container import volume in the U.S. wholesale market. As U.S. wholesale inventories were already at a low level, if sales show signs of recovery, import volume will also continue to increase. In the inventory growth rate by wholesale item in the previous page, Apparel, piece goods and notions items showed the lowest level of -23% in November 2023. As expected, as seen in the table on the right, the growth rate of container import volume in November 2023 showed a sharp rebound. And now, the summary. We've just finished reviewing the content of our first special report, the U.S. inventory cycle and the implication to container trade. To briefly summarize, the U.S. has entered the recovery phase, reactive destocking, in which sales increase and inventory decreases. As sales have shown signs of recovery since the second half of the previous year, U.S. import volume continues to rebound, leading demand despite difficult shipping market conditions in many ways. That's it for this month's ocean market trends. I hope you enjoyed this small insight into the shipping market. Thank you very much. I was Soo-Yap Lim from Logistics MI Group. Have a beautiful day.
Let's wrap up today's webinar. In a nutshell, the maritime market is ready for the new normal. There is a growing expectation that the Red Sea flooding will continue through the first half of the year. It's time to reconfigure your logistics plan based on the detour and increased voyage days and distances. In addition, shipping surveys are forecasting a widening of the supply-demand imbalance, which is another potential risk. The airline market trend will be harsh on the e-commerce space. Air transportation demand due to Red Sea issues is limited to a few hub airports. Freight rates are stabilizing due to volume compensating for post-Chinese New Year passenger growth. However, the focus is on freeing up space for faster delivery of Chinese e-commerce shipments. The final key to determining whether the Korean Air-Asiana Airlines merger will pass is U.S. approval. Hello, as a special guest today, we will have time to learn about the Samsung SDS Outlook Index with Sung-Chul Hong, a professional from the Logistics Data Innovation Group. Hello, Mr. Hong.
Hello, this is Sung-Chul Hong from Logistics Data Innovation Group. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Hong, the Logistics Division announces the Samsung SDS Forecast Index. Did you know that many people are curious about how the forecast is extracted and how accurate it is?
Yes, and if more people understand the Samsung SDS Outlook indicators through this webinar, I think it will also help stakeholders' logistics and management plans. A lot of people talk about accuracy in particular. Focusing on the trend of the outlook is a more appropriate way to use it rather than looking at the accuracy of the outlook. I think it is important to predict the rise and fall well rather than the 1% error range or the 10% error range for the figure.
That's really helpful. When I receive the forecast, I should make a logistics plan by reading the trend rather than sticking to accuracy. Then let me ask you the first question that everyone was curious about. How is the Samsung forecast indicator made?
First of all, Samsung SDS Outlook indicators were developed in October 2021 with maritime and air rate market forecasting models, respectively. We are constantly upgrading the model. This model is based on system dynamics, a methodology that seeks to understand the impact of interactions between various components in a system on overall system behavior. Modeling and analyzing the dynamic behavior of the system to repeat the form of the market. In other words, it also includes the concept of a feedback loop and a time delay that allows changes that occur at a certain point in time to be reflected even after the time of occurrence.
The feedback loop refers to patterns such as a drop in rates due to increased supply and a decrease in supply and a rise in rates, right? So what is the concept of time delay?
When the index, which stood at 1,000 in November, reached 4,000 due to the Red Sea risk that occurred in December last year, it assumed the aftermath of the accident lasted about 3 months, resulting in 3,000 in January, 2,000 in February, and 1,000 in March. In fact, rates have temporarily risen due to the Red Sea crisis, but the aftermath has lasted for months.
So you're saying that future freight changes are modeled to affect the interaction between supply and demand with the seasonality of past freight rates? And do accidents like the Red Sea issue affect supply?
Yes, that's right. In particular, in the case of the sea, the rate is SCFI, the demand is container traffic, and the supply is modeled on the shipping capacity of container ships. The rates are affected by demand-supply interactions. The sub-factors for supply and demand include purchasing PMI, GDP, ship delivery, waste volume, idle volume, punctuality, and cancellation, which are also covered in the monthly report. The airline is also modeled by freight, demand, and supply.
The sub-factors are made up of quite a lot of information, isn't it? Are there any more factors to include?
Yes, indicators such as canal traffic, cargo volume, and average delayed arrival days are the candidates for sea, and passengers and cargo load factors for air. We are constantly researching and developing to predict both numbers and trends correctly.
Mr. Hong, do you have any prospects for the air fuel? Following the trend of crude oil, the jet fuel, if domestic air rate surcharges are also predicted, we will have a strategic approach, especially to long-term contracts.
Yes, the fuel surcharge is included in the rates, so it can be said that it has already been indirectly reflected. The impact is expected to be more pronounced in the future, and from this year, we are considering reflecting the performance and prospects of jet oil prices provided by the U.S. Energy Agency.
Mr. Hong, we are living in an era where we look at the data to make decisions. It seems like it is the value of Samsung SDS Logistics Division to come up with a logistics outlook by combining reliable information.
Yes, Logistics Data Innovation Group is trying to refine and process data to provide value-added services within the division. In particular, in the case of rate market conditions, we wish to provide not only simple rate forecasts but also mid- and long-term trends and opinions from a demand and supply perspective.
Mr. Hong, thank you for attending today's webinar out of your busy schedule. Many people who watch today's webinar will acknowledge your efforts in the Samsung SDS outlook in the future.
Yes, thank you.